Guys, welcome to week 12 of the Sober Sessions. Firstly, I'll just to say we're a little bit light on the ground this week. The lovely Mandy and Kate decided to move on from the group. They got lots in the pipeline, so we all want to thank them so much for being with us for 12 weeks, and they're always welcome to collaborate with us and join us, or guests, or join us again. Today we've got the fabulous Mark Adderley, husband of Nadia. We spoke earlier in the week, Mark, didn't we, on a Zoom? And
yeah.
I honestly feel like I've known you all my life. I mean, we've only been following each other for a little while, but I just feel like our journeys are quite similar.
Yeah.
But you're obviously 15 years younger than me, and more handsome. But you gave up. Is it coming up to nearly 16 years now that you've been sober?
16 years this October. Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. And that was back in the time then. It was all very different then, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
So do you want to tell us, go through what the decision was to actually stop drinking back then?
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking about 2004. I was 34. And I mean, it was a problem. The drink was a problem that had been building. You know, it's always the hindsight productions, isn't it? You look back and you think, oh right, yeah, oh right, yeah, oh right, yeah, and you keep going further and further back, and you realise that actually you never drank normally, or you never used drink normally. I mean, like, I have 4 daughters, and my line to all my daughters, and there's a reason for saying this, and then going back, I always say to my daughters, for God's sake, if you can develop a relationship with alcohol where it's a brilliantly fun acquaintance, but not your best friend, then you're going to get a longer running relationship with it. You know, just don't make it your best friend, because your best friend will become your best enemy eventually. And so, you know, I would account for, prior to meeting Nadia, or Nadia Sawalha off the telly, as we call her on all our platforms, ironically, I had 2 children. I'd worked for 10, 12 years in television. And throughout all of that time, I would say that, again, in retrospect, most of my relationships, and certainly my relationships with my girls' mums, fell apart mainly because of drink. And then if I go all the way back to the first time I drank, you know, the first time I got drunk was in class at the age of, I was thinking about this the other day, I must have been only 10 or 11, and a friend, Paul, had brought in a bottle of gin. And our tutor teacher kind of said, you know, you can smell gin, can't you? It's a bloody terrible smell.
Yeah.
And also, not only can you smell gin, you can see 2 drunk 11-year-olds, like, you know, in the middle of the classroom. And so I was sent home, and that was awful. And then if I think of every time, you know, you can think of great swathes of time, like as a student, where we all kind of, you know, there were so many occasions, because drink's prevalent everywhere. There are so many occasions you can just sort of say to yourself, well, you know, I'm a student, that's what you do. Well, you know, just become a dad, that's what you do. Well, there's always a reason, isn't there? There's always a reason. And many of those reasons are valid. And so I wouldn't say that I was, you know, I couldn't have hit rock bottom quickly, but over the years, there was just quite literally a drip effect. And so the reason meeting Nadia was such a crucial turning point was because at that point I was 34. I had 2 daughters from previous relationships. My first daughter from a very long-term relationship, my second daughter from a not very long relationship. That chaos and confusion and, you know, the complexity of all of that came out of an incredibly wayward and up in the air, you know, lifestyle. And alcohol was the key component. I mean, on the way, drugs was there too, a lot of cocaine use. And so when I met Nadia, we both met through a fog of alcohol too. I mean, you know, a proper fog of alcohol. It was, you know, it was just balmy. It was chaotic. And yet at the same time, I think, what was the difference? What happened around that time other than just meeting Nadia? And that's like, I'm not underplaying that. It's like, Dave, you talked about when you met Em, there's, you know, there are those relationships, and obviously there's lots of people who don't have those relationships. But when I met Nadia, I knew that this was in many ways, I always wanted a family. I always wanted to live with my kids. I never knew a dad, all that kind of stuff. And yet I just totally lost control of my drinking.
Mm.
I was drinking on the idea of not having the relationship I wanted with my eldest girls, and I'm going to use a lot of AA phrases only because AA was a part of my early recovery. Back in 2004, there was very little else out there. There was very little else to cling to. But that thing of pour me a drink thing, that was me. I was very, and I would use this kind of sadness as a way of almost bringing in love interest, if you like. And like Nadia could see this. Nadia is very caring. She's an incredibly, she would describe herself now as an enabler. She's all those things, but she's an incredibly warm and we connected actually on the way she liked. She saw and observed the way I was with my eldest girls, and she liked that. She saw she could see I was a good dad. I was a nice dad, but I was a sad dad. I was sad about the situation. And so for the first year or year and a half that we were together, bearing in mind we were married in 6 months, and we had Maddie the following December, and we met the prior October. So all in the space of a year, we'd got married and had essentially our first child. And then by about a year and a half in, it became apparent that my drinking was just spiraling massively out of control. The really big litmus, sort of not litmus test, but the kind of moment where it absolutely changed for me was working for the BBC in Bristol, and I got done for drink driving. And there's nothing more sort of nothing like the short, sharp shock of waking up in a prison cell, phoning your wife who's got her baby daughter on her arms, sort of saying, "Shit, I need help. I need to get out of here." And again, you sort of look back and you realize all the wrong mistakes that people were making around you. And then the BBC helped me out. They kept me on, even though I lost my license for 2 years. And it was off the back of that, thinking back to that moment when we were talking, Dave, the other day, that I realized I had a problem, and I tried to just stop drinking. And that was kind of that sort of then was a year of not drinking with no help, not going to rehab. Went to one AA meeting, but I had to have a pint before I went in, because it was just, shitting myself, basically. And and then the most bizarre series of jobs came up for me. When I was explaining this to Dave, it sounds bizarre. My daughters would go into school at a certain point in their life, say, "Oh yeah, my dad's been to the North Pole," and they'd all go, "You're fucking mad. Your dad, what do you mean your dad's been to the North Pole?" But literally, it was a big sort of travel job that we were doing for the BBC. So we were going to Chile, we were going to the North Pole, and we were doing all this sort of stuff. And that came at the end of a year of sobriety, of self-enforced white knuckling, chaos.
Yeah.
And a huge part of the trip to the Arctic, it was a very dangerous experience. Lots of things went wrong up there, not because of drinking. I wasn't drinking. But when I came back, I had an enormous nervous breakdown, crashed and burned, in a massive way. Police stopping me in the street. I went on a bender. I don't remember what happened for 2 weeks. Nadia was at her wit's end, phoning people. She was in the garden holding Maddie, scared of what I was becoming. I mean, if you watch Ozark, I'm just watching the latest series of Ozark, and there's a character in it who's losing the shit big time. I was watching it last night, and I was having a bit of a kind of, oh my God, this is awful. This is, it was giving me that sort of, terrible, almost Vietnam War like flashback. And it just got, without a blow-by-blow account, it just got to such a bad place that Nadia said, "You've got to sort this shit out or it's over." And you get to a crossroads, don't you? You get to that rock bottom moment where you think, okay, what the fuck do I do here? And weirdly, I walked myself off. I mean, I think I'm the only person who did this. I walked myself off to rehab, booked myself in 2 weeks in advance. They looked at me and said, "You want to come in 2 weeks, not now?" I said, "Yeah, 2 weeks, because I need to go out and just finish what I started." I'd been relapsing for the last sort of 6 weeks, going mad and what have you. And then went out for 2 weeks, had another enormous bender. Don't remember any of that, apart from falling down the stairs of a lot of clubs in Soho and all sorts of shit, and went into rehab. And then that was 2004. That was October 2004. And rehab was very much structured around the whole 12-step recovery program. I mean, I think they felt, it was the only thing going. And that's, Christ, when you've been sober 16 years, that's only the beginning of the journey. Because although I've never picked up a drink, I think I've said this to you as well, Dave, I have to work so hard not to relapse emotionally all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, I get emotional when I sort of see your four faces there. And I think there's this connection between us all. And I sort of think, on the one hand, I think we've all been given an absolute gift, you know, of realization, of acceptance, of sort of hanging up the idea that you can control absolutely everything. And yet at the same time, you know, it doesn't come easily, does it? You've got to fight for it, and you've got to wrestle with it. So, you know, that was the alcoholic story. And obviously on that journey, there were so many horrific moments, so many drug-induced moments. When I look back and I think of the car crash moments, they just, you know, it's that, what do they call it? It's the sort of war stories that you hear in AA shares, don't you? And I always used to get rebooked at the beginning because it was always so good, because I'd give them blow-by-blow accounts. And I realized it sort of, there was a sort of strained, prurient sort of, oh yeah, your chair's really good, the story's really good, you know, hanging out of helicopters flying through. And it was almost like a badge of honor that you had that car crash, that the car crash happened in that way, or that there was that set dressing, it was a bit apocalyptic, you know, all that stuff. And I promote that because but of course, in reality, it was just shoddy, shabby, horrible, disrespectful. And yet at the heart of it was a woman who could see, and I think you said this about M with you, Dave, could see there was a kind heart in the middle of that tarry, nasty horror.
Yeah. Em had this saying that she'd say, if she was to cut me in half, I would be good throughout. It was all the other stuff, the chaos I brought into my own world and my own life, that she saw through that. And it's funny, isn't it? Because some people, they have that liquid relationship together where they're having a party, and once one gives up the drinking, that could be the end of a relationship or the making of a relationship.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like for you, it's made you something. Sorry, I'm not going to hog this, but something I heard you say as well, Mark, was that it's a common saying that you have to give up for yourself.
Yes.
And you slightly disagree with that, don't you? And it proves we're all on our own different journey. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm pleased you mentioned that. I mean, I get the idea of having to give up for yourself. I understand it. I understand what that means. I understand that it means that you need to know that you're self-sufficient if, God forbid, everything was removed from you. I get it. I understand it. But, and this is a big but, and I don't want to get overly heavy, but I mean, my default setting about myself is never, I can get it to better places, I can get it to functional places, I can be silly, I can be a good dad, I can be all these things, I can never be perfect, but I can be as good as I can be. But I'll never feel whole. And the reason I say that, and I think it's important for me to say that, is that I just want to accept that imperfection. I just want to accept the fact that I can't be fixed totally. So this whole thing of doing it for yourself, and it used to be drilled into us in rehab, you've got to want to do this for you. It's got to be for you. You've got to love you. You've got to, and I get it. I understood it. But the only thing that allowed me to save myself, and perhaps that balance is shifting over time, but the only thing that allowed me to save myself was only doing it for my children and my wife. It was the only thing. For me, it's a bigger victory that, say, Kiki, my 12-year-old, has never seen me or known me with a drink in me. That Maddie has never known me, bar, you know, as a babe in arms, as a drinker, and through necessity, unfortunately, Fleur and Izzy, due to just that sort of access weekends and all of that kind of stuff, I tried to manage it. Izzy's the only one. My eldest is the only one who had the not pleasant experience, which was me falling asleep and her not being able to wake me up and that sort of thing. The worry, she only ever had the worry, she would talk about, and the unreliability, obviously, that comes from all the other stuff of not being there at the right time and all that. But I could only do it for them. Sorry, that's the only way I could. It's the only way I could do it.
Yeah, amazing, Alex.
Yeah, I was just going to say I can completely relate to that, because although I really wanted to give up for the complete arguments and cognitive dissonance, you know, going all the time in my head of, I know I need to give up, I know I should give up, and all of that. It was my husband, and he didn't give me an ultimatum, but what he did say was, look, you are damaging you and you are damaging us. Every time you're drinking, you turn into a different person. And, you know, all that stuff about, oh, the real you comes out when you're drinking. It wasn't the real me. I was just really bitter and angry, and all the traumas that I'd experienced throughout my life, every time I had a drink towards the end, came out as this angry flurry that was just directed at my husband.
Right.
That weren't ever his fault. And I do think, had I gone on, that I would have been given an ultimatum or he'd have left. I do truly believe that, because I was making him miserable through my own misery, because it made him so miserable to see me miserable. And I was miserable, and I get what you're saying. You know, still now, I was saying to Lisa, weirdly, and not completely unrelated today, I'm not sure I'll ever feel fully okay. I'm always looking for the next thing to fill the gap, the next thing to make me feel whole, and I'm always looking outside of myself instead of within. So I can kind of relate to that. I mean, I'm very early on in my journey. I've only just passed a year, so maybe a lot of those demons are still there with me. But I really battle every day with my mental health, and trying to see the good in things instead of being a victim. I'm a struggle. I really, every day.
Mark, can I ask you, because you're really open about your mental health. I've been watching a few videos on YouTube about depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
What kind of tools do you use now to help you deal with that rather than drinking?
I mean, I think on a practical level, I mean, again, something that, you know, in the pre-chat that I had with Dave, I mean, I think we as you, and also as you say, Alex, we all cross addict. We all find something else to fill those holes. And, you know, I always just think, you know, however benign or kind of undamaging that thing can be, the better. So on a purely practical level, work and exercise are two time consumers. I'd say Nadia is forever on my back, rightly so, about the life work balance type thing, that one can just fall into a hole of constant making, constant writing, constant, you know, whatever. There's that. I mean, I think in terms of my soul, I mean, one tool I do use, and I am not a subscriber to the AA model, but what I do find useful about, say, AA, is if I'm in London for a meeting or whatever, I will always drop off at one meeting and stop and use that as a sort of meditation or an opportunity just to kind of tie up all your bad feelings into a bin liner, chuck it in the middle of the room and walk out, which is quite nice. Even if you don't get a chance to talk, there's that. I have used cognitive behavioral therapy. I have been to CBT, and that has worked in some ways. I mean, I think the problem I find with CBT is, you know, it's all about, isn't it, removing negative thoughts and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't get, it can deal with acute problems. You can sort of you can rationalize the problem of the day. But in terms of dealing with the essential me, I'd say still work in progress. You know, I don't, you know, I think I haven't hit upon a rhythm, and yet at the same time I've stayed sober for 16 years. So it's, I mean, a bit like a lot of us, you know, what do we call ourselves? Alcoholics, whatever. People who struggle with drink. We don't like being told what to do, and we don't like being tightened into or straitjacketed into anything for what do you mean the rest of my life? We were quite happy to drink for the rest of our lives, but anything, what do you mean the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
But, you know, I would say on a daily basis, it's a combination of those things. But one area that I've really failed in, and I've struggled ever since I stopped drinking. As soon as I stopped drinking, I set up my own company, and we made all sorts of programs for television. But the rationale behind that was really specific. It was, and we talked about this too, Dave, it was a really difficult industry to, you know, be part of a production team, part of a crew. You know, I was the one saying to people, I remember I had an editor years ago, Tony, who wasn't drinking. I remember when I was drinking, I'd be like that arsehole going, why aren't you drinking? Come on, you can just have one. I mean, what a moron. I mean, what an absolute insensitive idiot. He was like, no, I'm good. And I just knew I couldn't deal with that. And then at the same time, so many friends evaporated. So the thing that I'm not good at, and I think I need to improve, is my sociability or social, you know, I'm very social, incredibly social, but very unsociable, if you know what I mean. So I can be, you know, it's why it's, you know, a lot of our YouTube and mental health stuff, it does really help. And we were talking, David, as well, about how I think a lot of this technology does help. It's like sharing. It's like this.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, the fact that it could connect with someone is helpful. But I mean, I'm kind of saying bits, but I haven't got a complete set yet of solutions.
Sometimes you have to wing it as well, because like, I think you'll know that I was on the 60-minute makeover, and that's how I met Em. And it was a very, very booze-fueled industry to be in. And most of the reason that we did it was to get pissed, basically. You know, you'd work a long day, straight to the bar in our overalls, covered in paint and stuff. And then I think I told you, Mark, there was a new producer there. And I said, look, I'm going to go up to bed, guys. He said, no, you're not. And he plunked a bottle of red wine in front of me. So rather than a pint, it was a bottle. And I went through 4 bottles of wine until 3 in the morning. And the alarm went off at 5:30. And we were doing a nursing home in the middle of summer. It's a Christmas special. And it was 90 degrees outside and 90 degrees inside because I had the heating on. And I was like, no, I thought I wanted to die, you know. But that night, back on it again. And now I honestly don't think I'll do it again, because I wouldn't want to be part of that anymore. You know, now I've given up drinking, I'm not really interested in that. I'm not saying I'm boring, but it just doesn't interest me anymore. I've moved on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I was just going to say...
Oh, sorry. Go on, Mark.
And so just as a final, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think, you know, the industry that you work... So I think, you know, the social side of things, I've never taken off with the social side of AA. I've had sponsors who've been so chaotic in their lives that I've had to almost distance myself. You know, the point, it always makes me laugh, AA, because you're sitting in a room with a load of alcoholics. It's never really a recipe for a good thing. You know what I mean? I mean, not entirely, because what we're all about at times, we're all about ducking and diving and bending the rules and twisting things, and that happens in sobriety. And I think the thing that interests me most about being sober is how I can have periods of total relapse in my head and in my heart. I can be an absolute, you know, I can be riddled with jealousy. I can be riddled with, and, you know, going back to what you were saying, Alex, about, you know, when you're drunk, is it the real you? Yeah. I think it's the frightened us. I think it's the frightened you. I think every human being is frightened. I think that at our core, we are all shy and we're all scared, because it's fucking weird, this life thing. And I think we all find different tools to try and mask that. And some of those tools open up that's, you know, that fear. Yeah.
William, because we discussed the other day about this, about the myth about being the real you when you're drinking. Do you want to say how that is?
Yeah, there's probably a few points to make there. So the first one is obviously going back to I probably talk about this every week, but might as well do it again. But the brain tries to maintain homeostasis, so it's like a delicate chemical balance. And alcohol is a sedative, it's an anaesthetic, so it's a depressive. It inhibits or decreases nerve activity. So when you drink, the brain tries to recalibrate it. It becomes oversensitized, so it can work well under the sedating effects of the alcohol. So when the alcohol then wears off, you've got a period where your brain's overly sensitized, and that's when you kind of feel nervous and a bit. That's why people often will wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning when they're drinking and being unable to get back to sleep. It's because the alcohol's worn off and the brain's overly stimulated. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about, you know, pour me a drink. It's when you're in that state of being overly sensitized because of the previous drinking, everything looks awful. So, and that's quite often the dynamic people have, is that everybody has good things and bad things in their life. But the problem is when you've been drinking heavily and you wake up, you focus in on anything that's negative and you sort of concentrate on it, and it becomes more and more overwhelming. Now, of course, then when you take another drink, what you're really doing in taking another drink is putting your brain back to where it ought to be, because it's oversensitized, so it can work under alcohol. The alcohol's worn off, and then when you drink again, you get back to normal. And those things that were causing you a problem tend to then sort of evaporate. And that's when people, when they're drinking regularly, they become stuck in this thing of thinking there's something awful in their life. And drinking actually repairs it. Or what it's really doing is causing the problem, not causing the problem, but making the problem look insurmountable in the first place. So with drinkers, they tend to be either, when they're not drinking, kind of really timid and a bit nervous all the time, and when they are drinking, they become totally uninhibited. So it's almost like one extreme to the other. But the problem with emotions are triggered and then dampened down depending on whether they need to run or not. And the current thinking, this is done by the limbic system, which is a part of your brain at the front of your brain. And it's particularly sensitive to the sedating effects of alcohol. So when you drink, your emotions are triggered, but because the limbic system isn't working properly, they just run and run. So something minor will happen, and if you're if you're not drinking, you'll, like say you knock something over and break it, you might be irritated, but then you calm down and it's fine. But when you've been drinking, because the parts of your brain that should be inhibiting that emotion are themselves been sedated, they don't work properly, so your emotions just run. So when you're drinking a lot, you're overly emotional, you're hungover and timid, or you're just all over the place. So it's not that when you're drinking, it's the real you. It's completely the opposite. You're basically messed up with the chemistry of your brain, so it's not working properly.
Alex?
I was just going to say, my understanding of it is that what I've been doing for the last 25 odd years is actually just numbing out the fact that I do have and suffer from anxiety. So now I'm out of that, and now I've stepped away from the drink, I'm going to feel it more, I've not felt it because I've not allowed myself to feel it. And that's what I mean by I battle. I don't ever battle now, ever, with, oh, I am going to get drunk, or, oh, I am going to pick up a drink. That bit I know is done, I'm fine. But the battle is with what, like, why am I here? I ask too many questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Like, what am I supposed to do now? It's always as if I've got to fill it with something, because I can't yet. And I'm assured by my best friend there on the screen, Lisa, but I can't yet sit with uncomfortable feelings. So I try to fill that void with something external to make me feel okay again. I'm getting better. Better.
Mark,
what was that?
So I was going to say shopping, that helps, doesn't it? And now
I hate shopping, Dave. You must be joking. I bloody hate it. I can't think of anything worse.
So now, Mark, old Nads doesn't mind a drink, does she? Young Nads, I should say. Sorry, Nads. But yeah, the other day she had a few at lunchtime and was suffering the next day. And you quite like that whole atmosphere, don't you, of the sort of the get-together and the party sort of feeling?
Yeah, I do.
Bother you, does it?
No, I mean, there's a two-prong on that. If I feel comfortable and safe with the people, there's nothing nicer than, I don't mind at all people having a drink. And I think as Nads would say, I'll pour the drinks. I don't have any issue with that. There's often they say in AA, oh, you've got to have a dry house. That's my idea of hell. I mean, I don't mind there being, even with Maddie, our 17-year-old, going back to this thing of make drink a great acquaintance, not your best friend. If we're in a social situation with family or whatever, I think, if you want a cider, you can have a cider. That's fine. Just one at the table with us. That's okay. I mean, being around being around drink with family and people who are very good friends, that's not a problem. I really relate to what you're saying again, Alex, about the whole thing of anxiety and not being comfortable enough to go into, socially, say one of these glitzy things that Nadia's got arranged. I'm behind the camera. I do all that stuff apart from on our social media. But if she wants to go to one of these glitzy things, that's my idea of hell. That's absolutely my idea of hell. Not because I've got crushing low self-esteem, though I have had that. Not because I doubt what I am or what I do or who I am and all that kind of stuff. Not because my wife has got the loudest voice in the room. That's fine. And I mean that in the nicest way. But because I cannot bear the thought of all the awkwardnesses between us when people haven't had a drink.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That getting through the, oh, sorry, yeah, no. I mean, and it might, you know, it can sound really bloody so, but it's not like a fear. It is a pathological fear of falling between the tiles of some social situation and not being what they think I should be, and not, oh my God, how am I going to come across? Oh, do they understand? Oh, how am I going to? Do I need to be funny? Do I need to be really entertaining? All that kind of stuff. There's that side. But you're right. Being around it at home, being around it with safe people, I have no problem. I like sitting in a pub. I like pubs. I don't, you know, I mean, I like cafes too, but I like pubs too. And so people drinking, I don't have a problem. The only bit that's boring is when it gets to that point where everyone starts repeating themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and usually they're so drunk they don't notice if you leave.
We just leave.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Do you
so
think-
it's not uncommon knowledge that you're looking to date someone now, right?
Yeah.
If there's anyone out there, she's beautiful.
Her mum's watching, Dave. Give it
Is she? Get off, Mum.
If you was to date, like, Lisa, like someone who drank, would that bother you? Would it be an issue for you?
Don't know, I've been thinking about this myself. I think if they rarely drank, that would be okay. I think I'd really struggle with somebody that only found fun with alcohol, or waited all week for the weekend so they could go and get drunk, or relied on it every night after work, because I think it'd just drive me mad. My life has changed so much in the last 2 years. I just don't think I could go out with somebody that relied on it for a good time. But I think I look back now to when I used to go out and drink and thought I was like the life and soul of the party, and I never really fitted in. And I think sometimes you realise that them people just aren't your people, are they? It's you know, like these glitzy events, I just totally get it, that it's awkward and uncomfortable because you've got nothing in common, really. It's not about
It's really important
the drink.
to say, actually, yeah.
You're drinking originally to find something to say, or because I used to do it because I had quite bad social anxiety, which I found I don't really have that much anymore. But we can go, like, we've got Be Sober Manchester, so that's like, it's just fab. It's just a group of like-minded people that meet up and we go for mocktails or walks, things like that. And honestly, you cannot shut people up. We've all got so much in common. And I remember the first time, like, going to one of these events and being really nervous and scared and thinking, oh, it's going to be awkward. What am I going to say? Blah, blah, blah. And then within 10 minutes, you're like, I found my people. And it's just so liberating. So I think we shouldn't always worry about going out with all our old friends, because they're just not our people anymore. I think your social life changes, and it was a big worry to me that at the beginning, that am I ever going to want to go out? Am I ever going to laugh again? Am I going to socialise again? Did you find that, Mark? Were you worried about that in the beginning?
Very, very much. I mean, I thought all those things of, if I don't drink, I'm going to be really, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Really
So
boring.
it doesn't make any difference now.
All right, yeah, well, there you go.
You've done a few, you're all right.
I was so worried that I was going to be really, really, really boring. I was really worried that I was going to lose all my creativity, because, you know, there's that thing of, I always thought, well, we'd always be in an edit late at night. There'd be cocaine, there'd be drink. Come on, you know, I can't. Oh, look at that sequence; it's edited so well. You know, bloody idiot. You know, you look at it in the cold light of day the next day, and you're like, it's all right. You know, and so yeah, I had all that fear. I also had, I was genuinely grief stricken when I got sober, though. But and then 2004, 2005, you know, I reached out to a lot of my male friends in the business who I was very close with, you know, for many years. And even as I tell this now, when I look back, I'm so shocked by how sort of conventionally they literally turned their back on me.
Yeah.
And would say things like, well, you know, I remember meeting one for a meal somewhere. And it, you know, and I was nervous and all that shit that's going on when you've just stopped and you're like, I want to maintain this. How's this going to be without drink? I didn't know. And he kind of confirmed. He sort of said, "Well, that was deeply uncomfortable, wasn't it?" That's all he said by text. And never heard, you know. And literally, friends vaporized very gently. They wouldn't ask you to things because they didn't want someone sober. And what I realised is that, of course, I'd surrounded myself with so many people who were drinking, massive drinkers, And the one thing that, you know, I didn't want, like with my editor, as I mentioned earlier, the American guy, was I didn't want to be reminded that I had a problem.
Yeah.
And so I was going to become the reminder of the problem for all these people. So that was upsetting and quite distressing. And I would probably say that that's never really fully recovered. I mean, I liked what you said though about maybe it's just about the fact that these people aren't your people. And maybe it's also about the fact that some people don't want to be as sociable. You know, why is there an onus on us all having to be all things to? I mean, my wife is incredibly sociable, and I love that about her, and she loves that, and she's like that. I mean, interestingly, going back to the point we were just making before, she has said many times that if she hadn't been with me when I stopped drinking, she would be in a chronic problem herself now. So that there's that weird thing of by me stopping, it put the brakes on her.
It's balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
When me and Em used to go away for weekends, we used to do a little bit of shopping and then say, should we have a little bit of lunch and go into a lovely cozy little pub, have a couple of drinks. And then, of course, for me, I used to get the flavour then. I was like a greyhound out of a trap. And then I'd say, oh, should we have a bite to eat? And a lot of the time, we would stay out all day and all night.
Yeah.
And I remember we was having a meal in Guildford, and I couldn't even read the menu. I was that drunk. I had the glass, and I was like, I'm just a fool, you know. So it's a struggle as well when I gave up, because it limited a lot of things we could do as well, you know.
I think for partners, I mean, I know you did a separate chat about it. I do think, I mean, going back to what you were saying, I don't know if I was single now. Going back to this idea, I suppose it kind of almost intercepts that idea of not, you know, getting sober for someone else. If I had to date now or meet someone now, sometimes I sit there and I sort of see my girls, they're meeting boys and all this stuff going on. It's like I'm about to do a bungee jump, because I can put myself in the position of being single and I go, how would I do this without a drink?
Yeah.
How would I do this without a drink? So, you know, and also the other thing of how do you stay, you know, it's a very different experience staying sober when you have, you know, and this is where we go, again, goes back to that original question you asked about, you know, doing it for me or doing it for someone else. You know, say I get older, say my relationship falls apart, say the kids are grown adults, where is my strength going to come from? You know, and I think that side of it all forever perplexes me. That's when I then run into a room and do a CBT. Negative thinking. Get out quick. Don't go there. This is irresolvable.
I think you've actually answered your own question, though, because you've just had me thinking then. The reason I probably drank, and I know Lisa definitely, because she'll say this, is because you didn't fit in the first place.
Yeah.
You have to drink to be able to get to the level where you feel you fit in. So maybe we were all just looking in the wrong places for what lit us up in the first place. And it's
you don't realise that you don't fit in, I don't think.
No, you
either.
don't.
It wasn't until I was a good 6-7 months sober where I was like, oh, I never fitted. Like, I looked back when you were saying before about drinking from a really early age and getting drunk in school. I was the girl that did that before Thursday Club. I was smashed every week. It was just ridiculous. But looking back, that was where it all started, and it was me trying to build my confidence, you know, meeting boys and friends, and I felt like it just gave me this whole new me, really.
But we spurred each other on as well all our lives, haven't we, Lisa?
Yeah, we were a nightmare that together.
You're big drinking buddies, were you?
We've known each other since we were 11.
Oh wow!
And we've been best friends since then. And we used to drank through our teenage years together. We drank in the pubs together. We worked in a pub together. We drank tips together. We drank, and what would happen was we would perpetuate each other's behaviours. So one would get drunk and say, shots. The other one would want to catch up. Then the other one would want to catch up. And before you knew it, we're both going, it's fine. I've done worse than that. It's fine. So it was constantly excusing each other's behaviour. And just making idiots out of ourselves.
Now, what's weird, Mark? They know each other that well. I mean, they are the Ant and Dec of... But what's weird, I'll ask a question in the group chat and they will both answer it at different times identically. It's just the freakiest thing. They are so in tune with each other. It's incredible.
Oh, that's lovely. So in a weird way, you probably also know each other's cons and little kind of devious ways to kind of get around that when you were drinking, obviously.
And now.
We're learning a lot more though now. I think
we are.
Because we're working together with the sober experiment
Yeah.
now, we're learning so much more about each other than we ever knew when we were going out. And it's so lovely to know that we can be best friends and laugh. Like, we laugh so much. And that was something that we were so feared of not doing when we stopped drinking. So it's nice to know that we still really love each other and like each other without alcohol. So
that's amazing.
But that's part of the reason for getting sober as well, I think, because for me, I wouldn't have kept up with Lisa. Lisa would have literally, and you know, and this is something that sobriety does bring. Lisa's life branched off in so many other directions after she got sober, because it wasn't just about getting pissed. And if I hadn't have got sober, I would have just been getting pissed. And whether or not, I'm sure she will say, yeah, probably, she would have naturally gravitated away from me, and we would have lost each other. So the natural order of things was that I did the same. It wasn't kind of, oh, I want to be like you. It was just, I want to be with you.
Right. Yeah.
So, and both of our lives have gone off in different paths because of that. So we're very lucky, and we know we are, because we have real life sober friends, and a lot of people don't have that. And we're very careful when we post about that, aren't we, Lisa? That we recognise not everybody has sober friends, but this kind of thing that we're doing now, this kind of connection and sharing, you know, your feelings on socialising. You don't have to go out to the pub. You don't have to go out in front of drink. You maybe don't even want alcohol in your house, and that's fine if it works for you. But this is the kind of thing to do to make you sober friends and to find you sober people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be so lonely, I think.
I met William
I
at a sober do that I met the Rock Sober. I don't know if you know them, Mark. They're a couple of brothers, and they're great. They're brilliant, Lee and Sean. And I went to a sober do in Dalston, and I didn't know what I was walking into. And even getting on the train, I was thinking, this is weird, because I might have had a couple in the pub on the way there and whatever. And I walked in, and I walked straight into this room, and it was absolutely packed. And I bumped into William, had a chat with him, and I met the Rock Sober boys, Claire Pooley I've met, and it was just, you know, when it just feels right.
Yeah,
that's what you mean. When you find your people, it's, and I find sober people so, I've said it before, so humble and genuine and honest, lovely people that are so giving as well. You know, and that's what I love about it. There's no bullshit behind people where you walk in the pub and they go, hello, son, have a beer, and you walk out and they go, dickhead. You know?
You don't hear us after these sober sessions.
Yeah.
He was the right twat, wasn't he?
Yeah. But William, you've been sober for, what, 7 years, is it?
6 and a bit, yeah, 6.5 or something. Yeah.
Because it's interesting, because when Mark gave up 16 years ago, things were a lot different then. And almost in a way, Mark, you might have been, as you say, slightly outcast and whatever. But how were things in 7 years ago, William? Was it mainly AA or?
To be honest, I mean, I went to AA in 2 phases, but I kind of realised it wasn't really for me. I really liked people, but I didn't really get on so well with the programme. And what I realised, I mean, I quit drinking, and when I quit, I just thought that I was no good socialising without alcohol. But what I realised was I don't really think of myself as a particularly sociable person, but I do quite like socialising, but when it's with people who aren't drinking. And it's not because I get tempted, but I just, this may sound horrible, I find them irritating. Because when people start drinking, they start to repeat themselves. They think they're a lot funnier than they are.
You hear that, Em?
So like quite an early level, I just don't particularly enjoy it. And what I found is, particularly like, because alcohol is so prevalent in our culture, so I'll be at work and I'll be talking to people, and often you don't have a lot in common with them, but their main interest is drinking. So even though they're not drinking at work, they're talking about, oh, I went out here or I went there. And again, it just doesn't particularly interest me. But I found when I'm talking to people who either don't drink or it's just not a big part of their lives, I actually find that I'm fine with it.
No, I entirely agree. Entirely agree. I mean, I sometimes look back and I think to myself, I think of all the money I bloody spent in that square mile of Soho. And I just think I probably spent most of my time bored out of my skull, being boring.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I mean, all that, for God almighty, what a waste. And I think there's something to be said for that. That, you know, it does get very tiresome, very boring very quickly. I mean, you know, I think I said to you the other day, Dave, you know, there was a bit of a all social distancing, you know, it was Nadia's mum's birthday and they were in the garden and it was lovely but even with people you adore and you love, there just comes a point where something just isn't as funny as you all find it to be.
Yeah.
And it's great for you guys, but I've just got to bail out now. I think it's really important. Another thing, going back to what you were asking, Lisa, about what do you do for yourself, I mean, one thing I do or try to do as much as possible is always be, and this is nicking a little bit, I do nick bits of AA, if you like. I'm like a magpie. I go in and nick a bit. I'll have that, like that. I'll have a bit of that. Yeah, thanks. And being of service is one of those things. And, you know, if I'm feeling really, you know, if I'm having one of those days where I'm just fucking horrible or I'm just really aggravated or really down or just, you know, self-obsessed, you could say justifiably or not, I'll just try and force myself to think of, right, what can I do for the girls or for Nadia or for my mum or for someone or a friend? What can I do that will just take me out of myself a little bit and, you know, make them feel nice and make me feel nice too? And, you know, and that being of servicing is really key. And sometimes, it's interesting what you're saying, William, about being around, you know, I feel that staying for people drinking for the first 2 or 3 drinks is me being of service to them. Yeah. I'll hang around for you, but I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out.
Now you're boring the shit out of me, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. For God's sake, I've heard this shit. It was shit the first time, it's shit the 6th time. And so, yeah, and in a weird way, you can sort of reprogram even being with people who are drinking. It's not that I sit there and I think, there's nothing worse, and it's a really tricky one really tricky journey to navigate with children. You know, my eldest is 26 now, my youngest is 12, and I think it's really important that they see I'm not so sort of absolutely no about alcohol all the time, because that will just drive them to it. Even if there are occasions when I know they're going to a party or they're doing something and I'm cautious or I'm concerned, you know, I really think about how I can make it sort of normalize a little bit of drinking in some way and not be one of those judgy people.
But how do you do that, Mark? Because I've got a 21-year-old and she's literally me at 21. And she is, and it's really frightening to watch. And I've even, from her being 17, 18, she worked behind a bar, in a bar restaurant from being 15, so she's been brought up around it. And I've only been sober 2 years, so I do feel like I've played a massive part in how she deals with things. And I watch her, you know, like breaking up with boyfriends, she'll go out with the mates and get drunk, and it absolutely, honestly, like my 14-year-old, completely different. She won't deal with things like that because she's seen the other side. And I don't want to be preachy with my eldest one, but I find that I am, and I don't really know how to deal with that. So come on, please, tips for that.
No, it's a really good question, because I mean, I've got, you know, it's really interesting because like Maddie will come home now and she'll be very enamored with, say she's been to her friends, she'll be enamored with the fact that the parents of her friends have got a bit drunk and it's seen as very entertaining and fun.
Yeah.
And I have to confess, I sort of took Nadia aside at one point. I was like, God, you know, I sometimes feel bad that she just can't have that sort of normal sense of a dad. And she, like Nadia says, very quickly, so it's always good to have someone checking you out. Yeah, but you wouldn't have been fun for more than 3 minutes. And she would have seen you when you weren't fun straight afterwards, and you'd have been fucking horrible the next day, you know, going over and all that. But in terms, I mean, my two eldest, you know, they're both, the eldest has been through college, my 21-year-old is just coming through. And there comes a point, I don't know if this is any help really. I mean, there comes a point where for me, it's about delaying the inevitable for as long as you can. Or at the very least, not delaying it, because Maddie, I will let managing as best as you can with little nudges here and little nudges there, and demonstrating. I mean, one thing I do, and you will probably have noticed embarrassingly on our social media, I am incredibly stupid and clowny. I do like to try and prove to the girls that you can have a bloody good time without a drink in you. And you can not only have a bloody good time, but you can be bloody embarrassing
Yeah.
and not have had a drink. And I do sometimes, I'll hear the girls being really stupid in the other room with dads and stuff, and I can hear the hilarity. And I think somewhere that has got into them, and I love that. I love that. So I think there's a little bit of sort of proving by example, in a sense, that you can be a complete moron and you don't care how you're going to look and you don't care how you come across. So there's that. But then with my eldest girls, you know, if I'm honest, I do always keep finding myself looking at their behavior, Izzy and Fleur, and thinking, oh God, that seems so resonant. This could be, could that be the turn of all it's going to take is heartbreak there, and that could become the. And all I try and do with them, you can't make them not drink.
Yeah.
That's the frustration. All you can do, and certainly I'd say I'm most disconnected with the drinking habits, obviously, of my eldest, because they're adults now, and all I say to them is that I'm always there in a crisis. I'm always there when you're at your lowest ebb, because I've had many conversations with my eldest girls when they're going through, like you say, split up with a boyfriend, they're going through some problem, and I'll just try and talk them through it. I know that doesn't mean they won't go out tomorrow and get absolutely annihilated drunk with their friends. But I do mention it at times. I do say, look, where I tried to solve this by doing this, this, and this, it was wrong. It did this for me. It lost me this. So again, I try and lead by a different example of sort of saying, and I think just by allowing alcohol to be around, they know that I'm not like that. This is a no. You mustn't do this. They know that I'm reasonable. I think they realise that they're lucky that I've stopped, you know, and that they've got a dad who's alive and in their lives and cares and all that. But in terms of stopping the behaviour, it's a frightening moment, because you can't change their behaviour. They're going to do what they're going to do. But I think you can just forever tell them that you're there with advice, pre-drinking and post-drinking, and you won't stand in judgment of their choices.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that I said, like with Beth, is if you find yourself drinking because you're sad, just please come and talk to me. You know, if you're doing it in celebration or having fun with your friends, but if you find that you're doing it on your own, and we got this off Claire Pooley, actually. She said this, didn't she, with her teenagers? If you find that you're drinking on your own or more than 3 times a week, or because you're really sad, then come and talk to me about it. And she's promised that she will, so we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Izzy, my eldest, has been obviously also all in lockdown. I said that to her probably the second weekend. She said to me, "Oh, Dad, I'm worried. I'm just." I said, "Well, you've just got call me. Just call me when you feel that the drink's coming, or call a friend, or call someone else. You know, you're right. It's if you can intercept them. That's really good advice. I mean, I think if you have any inclination to drink on your own, it's a, you know,
it's interesting. Mark, do you ever wonder what you would be like, or where you would be in your life if you were still drinking? Like,
dead.
Yeah, that's what I think as
Dead,
well.
for sure. Dead.
Yeah.
And I'd have been, and I'd have think, I know exactly how I'd have killed myself. I was going, for me, addiction is slow motion suicide.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you're not saying it, you're not thinking it, but you're doing everything to, without your own power over it, get you there. And I really think that. I think it's a slow motion suicide, and I think I would kill myself.
Say that is true, because when I first met Em, unfortunately, she got cancer, and there was one time I was in the chemo ward, and she had the cold cap on, and the chemotherapy running through her system, and I had a raging hangover, and it was a real epiphany for me of like, on one hand, she's really doing her best to save her life, and I'm actually killing myself. And it really, really made me stop and think, like, what am I doing with my life, you know? Alex?
Just to say, I don't know if you saw it, Dave, but Em commented before to say her drinking is much less now since you stopped.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, Mark, I was a feeder. I mean, I used to just buy tons and tons of booze. People would come around, a typical thing. We've got a nice house, quite a big house. Everyone around Sunday afternoon, bifolding doors open. Have a drink. Wallet myself, you know. And I was the feeder. And now that I've stopped, most people hardly drink anything, you know. Like, people come over with one bottle and they're still... You know, I would buy 24 bottles
But don't you
Lisa was a
what-
shop feeder.
Shop-
She was a shop feeder. I hated shots, and she used to force me to have
Oh,
them.
really?
Yeah.
They were awful. I used to turn up to, when I was younger, like 19, 20, people would turn up to a party with a bottle. I'd be turning up with like aftershock and all like the ridiculous things.
I remember I used to go. Do you remember that restaurant? I don't know if it's still there in Covent Garden called Belgo's, which used to have the monks that used to. They'd bring food out. It's strange. It's like a Belgian mussels place. Anyway, the only reason I ever liked taking everyone there is because they used to come out with these schnapps, great long wooden schnapps. Well, of course, typical. They bring them out 4, 6, 8, and for super strength, they've got one that apparently 4 monks come out with about 86. Of course, I'd have to order that every bloody night. But that feeding thing, I still, when people come and they haven't brought enough alcohol, I still look at them. Are you serious? Is this your idea of a good night?
Yeah.
I can't lose it. And if I pour you a vodka, I keep being, I knock people out. I get no sense because I'm just pouring what I ended up pouring for myself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, have that. That's what I was having back then. Yeah.
A pint and a little dash of lemonade.
Yeah, I'll just pour it into a can to hide it for you, shall I?
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions here, Dave, on Facebook, if you want me to ask them.
Sorry?
Got a couple of questions on Facebook.
Go on then, yeah.
I think you've answered the first one. I won't go into that, but Colette wanted to know about her anxiety about imposing rules on her daughter around drinking. I think it's a daughter. Yeah, a daughter. So Colette, if your question wasn't answered, can you let us know? Because I think with Lisa talking about her daughter, it was. The other one from Laura. Mark, how were you at the beginning at birthdays and Christmas, etc.?
Horrendous. I mean, other people's birthdays and things like that. It was horrendous. Yeah, really horrible. I mean, it was difficult, and I think it took a bit of time for everyone in the family to understand that I was a non-drinker. So, I mean, again, quite quickly, members of my family, were quite sensitive to it and wouldn't sort of make it difficult. But I mean, right at the beginning, and I mean, if I'm asked to go to any social event, my heart breaks. I feel like I just go, and I tell you why my heart breaks, because I don't want to let Nadia down. I don't want to say, and I just don't. And you could argue it's really, and this is again being of service, it's really selfish because I'm just thinking about satisfying my not wanting to be uncomfortable, my not wanting to be in this environment. Whereas, I often wish I could do more so that, Nadia would like to turn up with someone on her arm at some of these things. I just can't, the thought of it just makes me want to, but going back to your thing, it's because I don't want to hang out with you people, actually. It's not just you're drinking it. I just don't want to hang out here. But yeah, my heart drops when I hear there's a sort of, like a wedding. Oh my God.
It's a long day as well then, isn't
it? It's a long, you've hit the nail on that. It's a bloody long day.
And you can't escape either. So the thing is, with a pub, you can, like, as William says, you just go to the toilet. No one knows you've gone. You just slip out the back door. A wedding, you're gradually watching more and more people get more and more pissed, and you're there at the end twiddling your thumbs thinking, what the hell am I doing?
We quite like pissed watching, don't we, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm just thinking I'm not inviting any of you lot when I finally get married again.
You better get cracking on Match.com.
See, I'd imagine that's really nice, being able to hang out with a sober friend. I'd love, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially with that history, being able to go back. I could well imagine standing there, with, I don't know, Perry Radford from school. Look at it, and there would be a real, I'd love that. That would be.
I'll be your friend.
Yeah, come on, let's go and point at people.
You should, honestly, it's so cathartic. It's really good. We stand in pubs sometimes when we've been and go, look, what he's going to do. What he's going to, he's done it.
It's, you kind of like pick out what you would have done, don't you? And you'd be like, oh, that would have been so you. Oh, that would have been so me.
And we see them and we go, oh God, look, this is going to be a regret in the morning. Look, they're going together. Oh my God, beer goggles. We really do take the piss out of
me and them went to a pub in the King's Road, and there's this guy, he must have been 80, and he was immaculate. He was absolutely immaculate. And he was ballroom dancing around the pub on his own. Like, that's excellent.
Oh, fantastic. That's where I'd have ended up. I always ended up challenging bouncers to press up competitions and shit like that.
Oh,
Idiot.
that's
You know,
what
I'll get
you
to this
used
club.
to.
No, you're not coming. All right, come on. Can you do it? Let's keep going. And they do it. We'd be having press up. I tell you, one of the places that I used to find really difficult right in the early days was when I was filming abroad a lot. It's flights. I found it so hard not drinking in airports or
Yeah.
planes.
Have you ever smoked?
Oh my God, far too much. Yeah.
Remember being on the plane?
Yeah.
When I tell some people now that I'm too old for them, like they go, "What? Smoking in cinemas, smoking on the plane?"
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember
Always at the
smoking on the
back,
plane.
wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember this plane. I do remember them having on the Central Line smoking carriages in London.
Yeah, I'm on the bus
Yeah.
upstairs of the buses
That's
as well.
right, back seat upstairs, yeah.
Lisa didn't even know they had coffee shops in an airport, did you, Lisa?
No, I didn't. I remember first going and there was a queue for the coffee shop and I was like, all these people drink coffee. Like, and you know what else I realised is when I landed, and I know this sounds quite bizarre, but I could see like proper clear. I was like, oh my God, I can see everything.
Yeah. I mean, in retrospect, I realise how much of the world I've seen through beer goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite shocking, isn't it?
There's a quite serious question here. How can I help my mum who drinks every day and refuses any help?
No.
Wow.
Well,
I mean,
there's a couple that you can tie this one in with that one as well, actually. How would you advise me to approach my partner? Ria's drinking, he loves getting drunk once a week and thinks it's fun and I should chill out. Am I overreacting? So I think you can tie both of those together about other people's drinking.
Well, I mean, one thing I would say is, we talked about this when I went on Loose Women to launch a mental health awareness. I think talking about any of this stuff is all about timing. It's all about picking the right moment. And I mean, picking the right moment isn't when they're drinking, and it isn't the hangover, the morning after. I think it's always finding a time where, and this sounds really manipulative, but it is, you do need to be manipulative.
Yeah.
It's finding a time where they're incredibly beholden to you or in a really soft, kind space. So it might even be waiting it out until you get to a birthday where, you know, when everyone has to be bloody nice to you. And you reach out and go, do you know what would have been the nice, do you know what I mean? It's kind of gently, and choosing the way that you talk about it. I think even the most hard and fast, grizzly nosed, that's the kind of drunk I was going to become, you know, gnarly nosed kind of, even their hearts can be touched. The thing I always feel about anyone who's got a real drink problem, and I think this is an eternally optimistic outlook, is that I do think most people with drink problems are deeply sensitive at their core, and they've just, you know, they found really brash and harsh ways of dealing with it through alcohol. So I think if you can just find that, it's about timing and it's about appealing to them in a way. I mean, something Nadia does with me sometimes, or used to a lot, I was sober obviously, but she'd often say to me, if she didn't like my behavior, she'd say to me, what would you say to your daughter if their partner was behaving like this? And that for me, every time I had a jealousy issue, every time, we've talked a lot about jealousy, you know, every time, and jealousy is about control, isn't it? It's about you're fearful that things are out of control, that you can't control things. And as soon, you know, find a parallel, find a sort of someone that you can replace yourself with. If they can't do it for you, think of someone that they really care about and get them to imagine that. And I think children often is a way of doing that. Now that sounds a bit Machiavellian and a bit manipulative, but yeah, I think we have to be, because the cunning, baffling mind of an alcoholic is doing all sorts of shit to get their drink. And just finally, just another thought on that, the parent thing. My mum stopped drinking 6 years ago, and my mum was a massive drug addict and drinker and all sorts of things throughout my growing up. She got to it, oddly, by just seeing me get happier. And again, I think that, again, some of this stuff has to be, I think there's a tendency to think we have to fix things immediately. And I think it's about take the time stress out of it, even for yourself. It might be that it's unbearable, but, you know, give yourself time and maybe approach it in sort of gentle stages.
Do you think it's important to approach it though?
What, at all?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people that I speak to, they'll say, I always knew deep down. So do you think it's important to speak to somebody about it? Is it kind of enabling if you don't do, or?
I think if you can see that if they're doing extreme damage to you and your family, and again, another nicked quote, but if the cost of that drink is so much more than the price of that drink, if the cost of that drink is, if your children are scared, if you're and you can be a grown-up child of a parent, you can be a scared child. I mean, I can still, when my mum was drinking 6-7 years ago, I could still not be scared of her, literally, she's tiny, but I would be scared. It would take me back to a place of fear, because I knew she was out of control. What would she say? How would she be? What's going to happen to her? So I think you can. I mean, it's that whole idea of, should you ever intervene, and when is the right time for an intervention? I think by not saying anything, more often than not, most people are enabling by not saying anything. I hate to say it. If I think of all the members of my family that I would, hand on heart, say, extended family as well, say they've got a real drink problem, they need help, and it's not my place to be able to help them.
Yeah, it's a bit like what we said, Mark, the other day. Sorry, Alex.
No, you go first. I'm just going to say something about that in a minute.
Told what to do. If Em came to me and she said, right, you got to stop drinking, I'm not putting up, I don't think I would have done. I know that sounds incredibly arrogant, but I think it's because she literally broke down in front of me, and it put a guilt trip on me in a way. It just made me feel so bad, and that's what triggered me to do something about it. So, sorry, Alex, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to say, and I'm not going to name because I've not had permission to, but somebody very close to me was in hospital last year and went through a rehab process and needed to do, and has since relapsed in a big way. And one thing I have done, and this is a family member, is I can't tell this person not to drink because I've been telling them for years, but what I have done is said, you will never drink in my presence, and you will never be drunk in my presence. So if you want to see me and my children, you will not come drunk. And that makes this person uncomfortable enough that they're sober when they see me. And that's not because I don't love this person, I love them like more than words, but I am not prepared to put me through the shit that they've put me through with trying to watch them recover and relapse constantly. So setting your own boundaries around it in a very, and I've not done it in an aggressive way, I've been very sensitive. I can't bear to watch you do this, and I can't bear to see this, and I want to help you. You will not drink in my presence anymore, I'm sorry. And that's then up to them what they choose to do. And it's not an ultimatum in the sense of I'll never see you again. I will, but I won't be around this person with drink because of what they're doing to themselves.
And that's brave, I think. I think it takes a lot of courage to speak to somebody that you love and say that, and not just keep brushing it under the carpet, because they've got to want to help themselves, haven't they, as well?
Absolutely.
I'm called the tyrant in my family, by the way.
That's good. I mean, I think people get shot. I don't think people, again, as I'm sure as parents, you try and, it's all about trying to get your kids to know where to put boundaries in, not to have the piss taken out of them. Don't let your friends treat you like that. It's right to stand up for yourself here. And I think, there are two examples there, in a sense, Dave. You're saying Em showed her true vulnerability to reach the heart in you, and yet you, Alex, were saying, you've got to be firm and boundaried, and people don't know how to deal with either of those things. They're very shocking things, because you forget how much in everyday life no one really sets out their boundaries, apart from quite a lot of Americans. They do.
I think it's important to note here as well, Sheila on here has said that she feels sorry for drunk people, and I think we've got to make a differentiation here as well between drunk watching somebody who's socially drinking in the pub and drunk watching with somebody who's now got an addiction or a problem.
Absolutely.
I would never sit on a bench laughing at somebody who's got a problem, including my own family members or myself. And it's a really valid point that you feel sorry for them, because from experience, and everybody watching here and us, you know what it's like to be stuck in that trap and not be able to get out. And it's heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
Heartbreaking, it is.
So, Mark, whenever I watch your channel with Nadia, all I actually hear is your bloody coffee machine going off. Young Alex, have you got over your addiction to coffee? Because I've
relapsed. Yeah, I did get over it. I stopped drinking it completely, and I'm sorry, William, I didn't want to tell you because you congratulated me and I feel like a cheat. I'm back. I was on 4 jugs of coffee a day. I'm down to 2, or I'm up to 2.
Wow.
You remember when you stopped as well? Oh, that was so hard.
Yeah.
It's
You're
amazing how
proper
we relate,
grosser.
isn't it?
So are there times do you think Nadia would misses you drinking? Because I know there are certain times that we don't feel the space when we go out on that, but she likes to drink, and we used to have a lot of fun when we used to drink together, and all of a sudden there's me, not drinking, and we're not twiddling our thumbs, but it definitely changes things in the relationship.
I think she massively misses it. I mean, going back to those moments when I don't miss drinking on the downers, which is what most of the drinking was in the end. I do miss, not being able to have a glass to congratulate Maddie on an audition, or congratulate someone on something, or do you know what I mean? Those moments, or like when Izzy graduated. I mean, I stood there with a Diet Coke and I felt, fucking hell, there is that sort of fucking hell, why? But what the fuck difference does it make what you're drinking? In terms of, I think Nadia, absolutely. I mean, I often say to Nads, I'm really sorry that we can't just have that sit down, kick back. It was our anniversary in lockdown a couple of weeks ago. We wanted to, we sat outside, we had something to eat. We wanted that to be, it would have been nicer just with a little bit of a drink. But as she knew, she realizes, I think, that it was never just a little drink. The evening would have spiraled in another direction. But I do think it is hard for the partner, really hard, who just wants that. It's a little bit of set dressing, isn't it? It's a little bit of, for the very same reasons that it makes you sit in front of boring people and listen to their shit, it also helps you get quite quick. It's a little kind of rush up, isn't it, to intimacy and feeling less self-inhibited and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is a shame. I mean, I miss it sometimes. I miss being able to just more quickly get to a place of feeling comfortable.
Alex?
William, a question that I think you'll be able to answer here. Somebody wants a few tips on dealing with cravings in the early days. I can't find the person now, it's too far up, but somebody's asked for that.
So the cravings, at their simplest, just remember that cravings are just fantasizing about having a drink. So it's you thinking about how good it will be to have a drink. And I think a few things to bear in mind there. Always bear in mind that the fantasy is not the reality. So for a start, if you're sat there thinking, to take the example we were just talking about now, say it's your anniversary and you're sat out there and you think, oh, it'd be really nice to have a glass of champagne or something. And you kind of have this in your mind, this idyllic thing that you're sat there, the two of you, and everything's perfect. It won't be, because the first thing is, if you've committed to stopping and then you have a drink, you're going to feel guilty and probably worried about where it leads anyway. 9 times out of 10, it's going to lead to too much drinking. So the first thing with cravings is just recognise it for what it is. The vast majority of the time, it's the thought and not the reality that drags us back into drinking. A lot of the time, especially at the moment with lockdown, people are saying it's really difficult, and you sit there and you really want to drink. Things are difficult at the moment, but a drink is not going to change that. A drink is going to make it worse. And if you think that you're sat there, you're worried about your money, your job, the kids' schooling, whatever it is you're worried about, having a drink is not going to take any of that away. Having a few drinks may dull it for a bit, but that's going to be more than countered by the fact that you're then going to be worrying about, oh no, I've started drinking again, and what's it going to be like tomorrow? So play it forward and think about waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning and being unable to get back to sleep, which is the thing I always think about, because that was the thing I hated the worst about drinking, was that waking up, just lying there in the middle of the night, not being able to sleep. But also play it forward. You're not going to have a perfect evening anyway. It's not what you think it is. And that's obviously not got a huge amount of time, but I think that's the key with craving. Recognise it for what it is. It's fantasizing about something. It is a fantasy. It's not the reality.
One last question on here, and I think we can answer this easily enough. Pandora said, have any of your teenagers spoken to any help groups or been to counselling due to your drinking? No, is my answer, but if you want them to, Nakoa. It's got to be Nakoa.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at our episode with Josh, which is on all our YouTube channels, and it'll be in the group.
Are we still raising money for them? Is that?
Yeah. Mandy's kept that link open. It's in the group. So if anyone wants to donate to that charity, we are still raising money. But they have trained counsellors on hand, and it is a charity, and it's nakoa.org.uk.
And
link in the description.
If you don't know, Mark, there's a girl called Katrine, and she's on Instagram, Girl in a Bottle.
Right.
And she does the most incredible animations.
Oh wow! I'll check that out.
Child of alcoholic. I'll send you.
Yeah.
She's incredible, isn't she, guys? She's just so what she puts on her pages is so moving and touching. The colour are brilliant, aren't they? Just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, there's quite a few ambassadors on our group, but you know, you can go online. It's completely confidential, and Josh actually told us that because they refused as a charity to breach any confidentiality, they almost didn't get funding. That's how much they stood to their ground and stood to their morals and said, no, if somebody wants to confide in us, unless they're highly at risk, we will not divulge any information. So, and even as an adult as well, because you all know this because you watch, but I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, and I still battle with that. And a few of us are here, and Mark, you clearly are as well. And
it was the first 12-step meeting I went to, I think.
And I was watching, is it called Gabor Mate?
Yeah, brilliant.
Mate. I was watching something on him last night, and actually I think that's part of the reason I had a bit of a meltdown this morning, because he said, let me get this right, because I say things wrong all the time, but it was something like, not all trauma leads to addiction, but all addicted people have suffered trauma at some point in their life, and that can be from bullying to abuse to neglect to witnessing alcoholism themselves. So I think, you know, to accept that, as a parent myself now, if my children and I felt I wasn't able to have those conversations with them now, which I do, thankfully, and break that cycle, I would definitely directing my children towards something like Nakoa. You know, I don't relate as being alcoholic, and I've said this before, but I know that things that they have witnessed in my behaviour and my rushing through bedtimes and the rest of it has had some traumatic effect on them, however big that is. And it's, you know, don't compare your trauma to anyone else's, because your trauma is your trauma. You can't compare something if you've never experienced it. So
I think that's really interesting that you say that, because I mean, I talk to my girls a lot, you know, sometimes if I've been to an AA meeting, or if I've been doing a live about something, you know, some of the people that I've met in sobriety who have really struggled with their own sobriety a lot are some people who don't feel they have enough qualifications in their trauma, if you know what I mean. It's like they look back at their child and they go, oh, shit, and they don't feel almost deserving of having the problem they've got. And I think it's really important what you say, that trauma is relative, isn't it? I mean, that trauma might be, the trauma of not fitting in is trauma enough, or the trauma of feeling marked as different, or suffering from an inability to belong and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't need to be something that's just happened to you. I mean, like, you know.
And it's often not an event. It's the fact.
No, you're absolutely right.
The event, you know, like if you've been bullied at school, maybe you never told anybody you've been bullied, so therefore comes the trauma.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting. So if you look for Dr. Gabor Mate on he does a lot on that, on childhood trauma as well.
Well, look, to lighten things up a little bit, where can I find Mark online, please?
Me?
Everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere.
Sorry, I'm now sniffing a pen. That's not a good sign, is it? The true addict. He uses a Sharpie and he immediately sniffs it rather than uses it.
Yeah.
Are you actually asking where you can find me?
Yeah.
Basically everywhere, right?
Oh yeah, everywhere. Instagram, Mark_Adderley.
Yeah.
And I think I follow. I'll check my accounts. We must all exchange. And YouTube, the Sawala Adderleys. And
I've put your links on the description actually.
Oh, brilliant. There you go. Those are probably the two main ones. I'm very Facebook illiterate.
Oh, I am. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
It does my head in, to be
It
honest.
used to do my head in.
Guys, you realise we're on Facebook right
No,
now?
no,
don't
no.
you?
We want to embrace Facebook, but I kept being approached by people from my drunken years. I didn't remember. I was like,
Oh, I get it.
I cancelled my
actually put it
account for
out
10 years because of that.
I put it out on Facebook on my Sober Dave page on my old Facebook,
yeah.
and people from the cobwebs back in the day were like, "Oh my God, Dave!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "What have I done? I
Yeah.
can't undo it." Do you know what I mean?
It's like The Walking Dead coming to.
I know, but guys, look, we're coming to end. I'd love to say, Mark, and I'm sure you guys will agree that doesn't it feel like we've known him forever?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Well, thank you for making it so lovely. And
honestly, mate, you're so lovely and honest. What we love about you is how your honesty shines through.
well, you're all lovely, lovely people, and you confirm the fact. Anyone else watching or listening to this bunch are lovely. Like most sober people who've got a problem with alcohol, we're just deeply sensitive people.
Yeah, that's right. Em always says I'm too sensitive. Mark, stay on because we'd like to chat after. But can you just show everyone what I looked at the other day when I was chatting to you? This is what I go on.
You're now on my computer, so I'm now going to move you around. This is my alter ego. But he's observing all the PPE. Which is good. He socially distances. I have really meaningful conversations with him.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Guys, have you got anything else to say before we go?
No,
thanks, guys.
Just thank you. It's been amazing talking to you. Just as wonderful as Dave promised it would be. So thank you.
Oh, bless you. No, it's lovely talking to you, and I'm going to follow you, and let's all do that social media thing.
Yeah, let's be friends.
Oh, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time, because I know it's quite a long sober session, but I think so many people will relate and get so much from it. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And stay on the line, Mark. We'll just say goodbye after.
We'll do.
Thank you guys in Facebook, the wonderful
Bye everyone in Facebook who Dave loves.
Yeah, Facebook.
No, I just don't understand it. It's all right. I'm 55, you know. But thank you guys for watching. Take care. Have a lovely weekend. Speak to you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.